Chapters 15 and 17 of Volume 3, Great Expectations. In this chapter, in chapter 15, the Great Escape Plan is taking place, okay? So Startop and Pip and Herbert are transporting Magwitch down the river. They're going to somehow connect with this vessel, and somehow he's going to get away, and Pip is thinking he'll go with him, and, you know, all of this. Unfortunately, the customs house officers who patrol the river looking for, you know, sort of criminal activity, they discover him, and we learn that Compeyson is with them, likely has tipped them off, and Magwitch and Compeyson, you know, kind of confront each other again. They fall in the river, they quarrel. Compeyson is actually killed or dies somehow, but Magwitch is very badly hurt. He gets stuck under the keel of the boat. It's really awful, okay? And I mean, now Magwitch again gives up his freedom to ensure that justice is done. And that Compeyson pays for his crime. So Compeyson dead, Magwitch now is arrested. The customs officer take his wallet with like all of the money, like hundreds or thousands, I don't know exactly, of money. And this is the portable property that Wemmick had so like said to Pip, make sure you get the portable property, and he didn't. It's gone. It's gone. All of Magwitch's wealth gone. Now, Pip had already decided he wasn't going to use it anyway, but it still is just wow. And you can imagine how Wemmick and Jaggers feel about this. They are just devastated. So during this, Pip has changed so much, though. He remains loyal and grateful to Magwitch during this whole thing. Look on page 408. It says, "For now, my repugnance to him had all melted away, and in the hunted, wounded, shackled creature who held my hand in his, I only saw a man who had meant to be my benefactor, and who had felt affectionately, gratefully, and generously towards me with great constancy through a series of years. I only saw in him a much better man than I had been to Joe." It's so sad. Like, he just, all these regrets, but yet Pip has changed so much. He's evolved. He's become this lovely young man who actually cares about people. He's not so concerned. He doesn't despise himself for being common. He now, you know, despises his snobbery, and it's lovely. So Herbert ends up telling Pip that he's going to be moving to Cairo, and he and Clara would love for Pip to join them. He actually makes Pip an offer he kind of reluctantly is like, to come with him and be his clerk, which is kind of insulting in a way, to be a clerk. But Pip, you know, is very gracious about it and happy, like doesn't feel at all offended because he's not so pretentious anymore. But he's kind of reluctant to do this because he feels that he needs to stay with Magwitch. There's another funny little scene in chapter 16 with our like quirky Wemmick who wants Pip to come to go on this walk, and it's really sort of ambiguous, but it turns out that he's planned a wedding with Miss Skiffins, and that is like a really humorous scene, okay? It's quite funny. So chapter 17, Magwitch is very ill. He's very badly injured. And then on page 416, it says, I think this is so interesting. He says, "I sometimes derived an impression from his manner or from a whispered word or two which escaped him that he pondered over the question whether he might have been a better man under better circumstances. But he never justified himself by a hint tending that way or tried to bend the past out of its eternal shape." You know, how sad that, you know, he recognizes that, and he doesn't, you know, he doesn't make excuses, but it is a reality. You know what? I said this already. When people's basic needs are not met, they end up doing things to survive. It's like this primal instinct within us to fight for our survival. And, you know, maybe under different circumstances, but is not to be the case. And then Magwitch is sentenced to death along with 31 others. And Pip witnesses this, and it's really poignant. And Pip hopes that Magwitch will die from his illness so that he doesn't have to be executed. And indeed, Magwitch does die. And look at the very end of chapter 17. It's kind of this lovely sort of attempt or redemption. So he says, He's dying, and Pip tells him, "You had a child once whom you loved and lost. She lived and found powerful friends. She is living now. She is a lady and very beautiful, and I love her." With a last faint effort, which would have been powerless but for my yielding to it and assisting it, he raised my hand to his lips. Then he gently let it sink upon his breast again, with his own hands lying on it. The placid look at the white ceiling came back and passed away, and his head dropped quietly on his breast. Mindful then of what we had read together, I thought of the two men who went up into the temple to pray, and I knew there were no better words that I could say beside his bed than, "O Lord, be merciful to him, a sinner." So he's kind of thinking about this story that they'd read in the Bible about these two people to go up to pray, and the one is like, "Hey, remember me? I did this, I did this, I did this," and the other one is like, "I'm a sinner, have mercy on me." And the one that said that is the one that God received. And so, again, Pip is recognizing it isn't about status. It isn't about all that you've done. It's not about show. It's about who you are inside. Are you humble? Are you caring? Are you loyal? And these are all the things that actually describe Magwitch and Joe, and maybe now even Pip.